My name is Rukhsana Ahmad. I'm a writer based in London.
And were you born in the UK?
No, I was born in Karachi, Pakistan.
And where did you grow up?
I grew up in Pakistan. I came as an adult to live here after my marriage.
So how did you get involved in theatre?
Basically, I'd started writing. First, I worked as a freelance journalist briefly, and then I think Ravinder Randhawa invited me to the Asian Women Writers Workshop, and I think Tara Arts had put out a call to the Asian Women Writers Workshop saying they were looking for writers, so I applied for the position, and he interviewed me, and we got on really well, and he asked me to write a piece for them, which was a theatre and education piece. In fact, it was a very interesting way of working because the company devised around the concept of the play. It was called Sepoy's Salt, Captain's Malt. And it was based on letters, the census reports on letters from the Indian soldiers written back home. And it was a journey of discovery for me because it was shocking to see what kind of things had been censored.
So it was a kind of a, would you say, a westernized form of theatre that you were writing for? I mean, did you do this in Karachi?
No, I just qualified and taught for a year or two at the university, teaching English and English literature. So that's all I'd done. I was still quite young. And then, of course, I lived here for a few years before I started writing. I had my children. So, yeah, I think I had done a little bit of creative writing, but very little theatre, but I'd read drama. And I was a theatre enthusiast, so I'd seen some plays. But in Pakistan, there weren't that many opportunities to see work, a bit more than there are now, because the British Council would sometimes tour a project, or the American, what was it called, the American Embassy's Cultural Education, I think PACC, it was called Park American Cultural Center.
So did any of the indigenous Pakistani styles of performance influence you when you started work on this?
Not hugely, because really folk theatre over there is quite crude. It's very funny. It's hilarious. It's actually all quite jokey. I'd seen two or three things, I think, at melas, like festivals, as a child. But I don't think I would call it theatre. The Urdu stage plays were held at a Theosophical Society hall, which still is a performance space in Karachi, which used to exist at that time, and that was also quite comic. And I think my own vision as a writer is quite dark. I think I write more serious stuff. So I don't think the style was a big influence, though I think the literature is in my writing, because I read quite a lot of Urdu literature. I was quite a voracious reader as a child, and continued to read Urdu literature for quite a while. I still do, but I think I'm more of a connection with Urdu poetry now.
So your first play was written when?
I think it might have been 85 or 86. I need to check back on dates, but I'm not so sure. But I think 84, 85 maybe.
And you use English as a language?
Yes, I do, yes. I mean, it was my medium of instruction as a child as well. So, and I read English at university, and I came here and did a master's also in English literature.
So you're telling me about the cast that was in this?
Yes, so that was one of the first pieces that I did, and I've come across those actors over the years in various capacities. There was Shakuntala Ramani, and there was Dominic Rai and Rez Kabir, who were the performers. And I think Tara Arts continued to commission me for 2 or 3 other pieces I did for them at that time. A couple of things based on Manto. And I think a couple of the pieces were produced.
So what did you feel that there was therefore a distinct theme of South Asian theatre developing in this country during your time?
I think it was very much identity-based theatre at that time. I think we were all preoccupied with issues of identity. These were basically, I remember at my interview, Jatinder mentioning something about the death of Gurdeep Chaggar. And really, we felt that things were bad. There was also, I think, during that period, I can't remember the exact date of it, the Enoch Powell speech of Rivers of Blood, which most people will remember. You felt a little bit threatened. I think the interesting difference from then and now is that at that time, South Asians saw themselves as a much more cohesive group. I think it was an opportunistic alliance, if you like, but people saw the South Asian identity as one. Basically, you greeted a brown person if you saw them with a little bit more warmth because you felt there might be some empathy there. And all that with the increase of the number of immigrants has gone. And I think there's a little bit more factionalization now. So you have more the Indian diaspora, the Pakistani diaspora, the Chinese diaspora, and so forth.
And how do you feel that South Asian theatre has changed, therefore, from your time when you first started?
It's very difficult to be pronouncing about things in a global sense, and I hate to generalize, but I think this thing of more factional identity has permeated into the theatre as well. I think 9/11 has had a huge impact in terms of severing, if you like, the happy unity that existed between Indians and Pakistanis.
So do you think there's still a continuous common thread amongst the different factions?
I think there are common threads because often when people start writing, identity issues are still on the surface. I think usually a lot of writers start with exploring their own personal experience before they dare to write about observed experience. I may not be right about this generalization. I think people vary in their levels of confidence, and the more confident you are, the more extensively your range will broaden out, I feel. I may not be right about this.
But what about your own artistic journey? Did you sense that happening?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think I speak from within as well. I think I was much more hesitant to write about, for example, male characters until I had done a few stories, and then I started adopting the male point of view or the point of view of a character from a different race, because you begin to see the common threads of humanity that we all share, and the common universal themes. It becomes easier perhaps to do that, I don't know.
So that brings me neatly to Kali Theatre, of course. It's for women writers.
Yes. I think the 80s were very strong on feminism, and women were very concerned that there hadn't been enough provision for them in the theatre. I used to be a member of the Theatre Writers of the Writers Guild of Great Britain and a member of the theatre committee of that guild. I basically got a membership card quite soon because of the commissions, and I think it was a very interesting time to be involved with the guild. There were very few black or brown people of any hue in the Writers Guild. It was a very white organization, and a writer called Bilash invited me to join, and he said, you must come and you must take part, and asked me to be active. So I joined the theatre committee, and I remember the research at that point saying that plays written by women were 0.5% of the number of productions that were made every year. 0.5%. They were all written by men. And I think working in the theatre and learning by experience and making my mistakes made me also see that theatre is an art form where you do need a structure of support. You do need collaborators, you do need the stepping stones. It's a very specific, very craft-based form. Anybody can pick up a pen and start writing a piece of prose or even a script, But to write good theatre, you do need to understand the structures, and I felt like I hadn't had the support, and Tara had been fantastic in terms of opening that door and just having people to work with. Even though all my initial pieces were theatre and education pieces, or community theatre as we used to call it then, I was invited to come in to write about Pakistanis in Worcestershire, Pakistanis in Cleveland. I would go and interview people, talk to them about their experiences, and write a play that interested them, that was of local interest. I felt that it would have been good if there had been some kind of a training ground. Now, at that time, there was a company called Monstrous Regiment, which actually went bust soon after. They commissioned me to write a play, which they did not produce, partly because they were coming apart as a company. They were falling apart. There was no funding. They were leaving. Their own careers had taken off. And the piece was also very raw. Sorry. I think Rita Wolf wanted to produce it. She heard about this play and wanted to produce it. She asked me if I would be a partner with her if she set up a theatre company. That's how Kali came about. And I think in the process of producing that play and workshopping it, which Rita helped to do, we had quite a lot of actors involved, and we had 2 or 3 different readings. We workshopped it for a little while before I finally got the script right. It came about that we decided that it would be good to also set up a support structure for the women. So Kali changed direction and became much more about helping to develop Asian women writers in this particular art form.
And you have had quite a wonderful transnational experience, having been brought up in Karachi and now living in London. How has that impacted on your work?
I think you always have both eyes looking at different things. You do have a very divided vision, and you're always looking at the experience as a third world citizen as well. I know people over here complain that you do not have enough commitment to this society. I think this is not true. In fact, the diaspora often carries over some of the values, and we are criticized back home for not being Pakistani enough. And here you would be criticized for not being Asian, British enough. So I think you do have a habit of telling stories that are multi-stranded. I think the main difference in our cultures is not so much that there aren't people with a Western bent of mind in India or Pakistan. There are, and however post-colonial we might be, there is an impact, there is a cost of living here. You do have your commitment to the West, which may run deeper in some cases than it does in the subcontinent itself. But I think you end up having always a sense of being the other, and having a sense of what it feels like to be the other.
And so when you write your work, do you have a very clear sense of who your audience is?
That's a very tough one. I don't think you write for an audience except an ideal one that really understands who you are. I mean, your ideal audience are people who think and work like you, but on the other hand, you're also trying to disseminate ideas to a wider audience that you want to reach. But no, I don't think I have a clear sense of who my audience are, no.
But when you start your research on your plays, like you said, you've been to different regions to do that, to talk to people. Are you very conscious that they want to see an outcome of what you're doing there with them?
That was great, because then you knew exactly who your audience were. I think with the community theatre, you have a built-in audience, and it's fantastic. When we were running Kali Theatre Company, we always, when this question came up in discussions with the Arts Council or within the company, we always felt that we would like mixed audiences. We were not playing just for the Asians. that the purpose of the theatre was to build bridges across community groups. And I think that's what most writers hope to do. Yeah, but I think it's very difficult to know, it's very difficult to be specific. There will be Asians who hate my work, and there will be Asians who like my work, and equally there will be British people who will like the work and it will speak to them. It's a question of who opens up their heart to you.
But also, we're looking at a whole range of mainstream audiences, really, in this case. You need the support of the mainstream marketing, the press, the venues. I mean, how did you find that? I mean, did you get any support from them?
Well, I think it varies. I don't think the mainstream is interested in minority theatres, is my frank opinion. And I don't say this with any bitterness. I think it is how it is. We are all interested in ourselves more than... It's like growing up. And the more mature a society is, the more able it is to empathize and reach across, if you like, to other communities. And I think it's kind of a case of one step forward and two steps back. At the time when I started working, multiculturalism was a very popular thing. It was the buzzword. And because of it being multicultural theatre, we were being asked all the time to come and come and tell stories to children in school, come and talk to them about writing, have young people's workshops here, there and everywhere. I was kept very busy and earned a reasonable living from being a writer in residence in various places, various communities, and worked in Cleveland, worked in Newcastle, worked in Harrow. And it was fantastic because when you go to work as a writer in residence, you worked with and you talk to people of all hues, and it is a very mixed audience, and that's how it should be. But I think there has been some regression from there. There's a lot of anti-immigration feeling now, and it's very sad to see that regression.
So why do you think that this is happening?
I think it's economic, and it's driven by politics, and it's driven by the new kind of horror that has been constructed by the West in the name of Islam. So Islam is always perceived as, excuse me, Muslims are perceived as always dangerous, unreliable, the enemy. So there's a lot of alienation from Muslims and a lot of antipathy, a lot of hostile coverage in the press, which has also produced a backlash against migrants in general. I mean, I think I was shocked. Recently I was in the States, and the Miss America award, beauty contest award, went to an Indian woman, and people were saying, why have they gone and given this to a Muslim woman? And what do they mean by, what has she contributed? She's probably, and she's not a Muslim even, you know? And you kind of think, this is the level of prejudice that the world has come to, so.
So do you think that all the work that you've been doing for the past few decades has kind of, in a sense, become fruitless?
No, I don't think so. I think the work remains. I think it would be it would be foolish to think that nothing has changed. I think things have improved as well. There are people who have taken us backwards, and there are people who have gone further. And in a sense, the mainstream has opened up much more. I'd always hoped that Kali's theatre company itself would become dispensable because, or would not be needed because the mainstream had opened doors. More doors were open to Asian writers. To an extent it is happening. The fact that someone like Indu Rubasingham is running a theatre company, that, you know,
Eunice, tricycles.
Exactly. Yeah. So running a theatre, I mean, she's got a control of a decent artistic space is significant. I think the Oval House has played a major part in presenting work. We, as a company, Kali worked with them for 10 years, and they were very supportive to us. Soho Theatre frequently programs stuff, Arcola programs stuff. So I think in a way it's better that there shouldn't be divisions. So I don't think that nothing's improved. I just think that politics and economics keep driving us downwards.
But do you think social media also plays a part in the sense that it's easy to tweet something that's really subversive and reactionary and quite extreme?
Social media and any kind of visits to Facebook can be quite depressing because you see sometimes such negative coverage of things. But the mainstream media is pretty bad as well. I think apart from a handful of journalists here and there, and they're often not liked by people who want to. In the end, we read and like stuff that we want to read and see or hear. And somehow I think we want the arts to confirm our own views. So it means that people who read and enjoy or see work produced by Asian writers are often people who are open-minded, and we are often preaching to the converted. But at the same time, when you look at the number of mixed marriages that are there, the number of relationships that exist, the number of organizations that have had to force their doors open because there is so much talent and so much ability and so much, if you like, energy from the minorities that they would be foolish not to. And interestingly, the commercial world itself recognizes this. So you often have very young CEOs who are of Asian, Southeast Asian origin, who are doing really well in the mainstream. And that begins to have an impact. That has a trickle-down effect as well.
But also social media can be very unifying, you know.
It can be also fracturing because people tend to, again, cohere around ideas that they like. So I don't know what the solutions are. It's always difficult to know what the solutions are, but...
Because you started work, your creative output in a time of non-social media. Now social media is rampant. Have you ever considered using it as a tool for your work?
I would like to, but I think, perhaps I do, in the sense that if I have something that interests me, I will promote it on Facebook, for example. I don't tweet, although I have a Twitter account. It's just so time-consuming. I feel like there will be a time when I will be using it more. I mean, the process of getting a website done, I mean, my own work is across genres. I do plays, I do books, I have translated, so I have a wide range of interests. I'm a translator as well, from Urdu into English. I think it would be useful to have a website that kind of enlists all the work and where people can get information about my work.
You mentioned fracturing of communities. So how do you feel that this fracturing is helping tell stories from these fractured communities? Do you feel it's a useful thing, or do you find that it just positions people in niches?
It depends on how they want to position themselves. I think writers are quite powerful in the sense that you make your own space. So I don't feel constricted by the fracturing. I think I have my level of empathy for things that are South Asian, that's wider than Pakistani, because I don't think I like the parochialism of nationalism. I mean, I do think nationalism and patriotism are quite parochial instruments of identity, and they're divisive. So I do keep myself away from them. And I think I want to preserve my own individuality as a writer, which has a Pakistani component to it because I was born there in Pakistan and raised there, and a lot of my imaginative life still continues to be there. I visit there regularly 2 or 3 times a year sometimes, as my mother is now quite ill. But I think, on the other hand, I love all things Indian as well. My family were originally from India. My mother's family were from Delhi, and I loved visiting them and going to see the relatives there, and feel that there is so much shared, so much in common, that that's also important to connect with. A lot of my friends are Indian. My closest friends are, I suppose, British Asians from various backgrounds. So I think all of our identities are very kind of multi-stranded now. And I hope that one would not never be constricted by one's origins.
And talking about creating space, your own space, tell us a bit about Salida.
Well, Salida came about because Lakshmi Holmstrom once actually said to me, oh, she thinks it's really important that there should be an archive of South Asian work. And basically I was in the position to pick up the phone and ring the literature officer at the Arts Council, because I was doing some work for them on a magazines panel, and I said to them, could they fund such a thing? And they said, well, we'll give you some seed money. And that seed money enabled us to organize an application for the digital, the new media grant. That was there was a body at that time which was designed to help people make inroads into new media, and they gave us money to set up some kind of a digital archive. So that's what it was. In fact, one of my great friends, Rahila Gupta, also knew quite a lot about media, new media and technology. She and Paola Marchioni, who used to be a research assistant at the library in the Commonwealth Library. Commonwealth Institute used to have a library, and I think she was a research associate actually over there. They helped to put together the application, the original application, which got us the first grant to set up Salida. And we invited various people to come on the board, and basically by default I became the chair, and I found myself doing quite a lot of work, which prevented me from writing, so I had to leave after 10 years. I had to bow out. But I think I'm pleased that the organization has survived, and Lakshmi has continued to work with them. And the board is now chaired by Shyama Pereira.
So you really started something that was quite radical in those days.
Yes, so, but it's absolutely accidental, if you like. If Lakshmi had not, I was like, you've always been talking about it, let's actually get together and do something. And there were 3 or 4 of us women who had kind of worked on it initially. Myself, Lakshmi, Vayu Naidu, and Ranjana Ash at the very first stage, and then another group of wonderful women who helped to come and build it together, and women who served on the board, and I think Paola was very central, and Rahila too at that stage.
So you've been in the forefront of quite a number of very inspiring moves, especially with Kali as well for women. I mean, was that the first theatre company for women?
It was, I don't know if it was the first, because the Tamasha came about at the same time. I do remember saying to Christine and Sudha that let's get together and make one company, it will be stronger. But they said, no, your objectives as a company are different. Ours are entertainment, and hence we've chosen the name Tamasha. But I can't claim credit for originating the ideas, but I love working with people. I'm actually quite an extrovert as well as being an introvert, which writers often are. But I think I like working with people. That's why I love the theatre. It's very enjoyable to work with actors and have the support of other people, and I've had a lot of fun. I mean, I think I had the habit of also roping in people that I knew. So I would ring up and say, look, Rahila, please can you help with this? Or Ravi, can you help with this? And they did. Even with the with Kali Theatre Company, people came to workshops or did admin or whatever I needed help with. So it's been partly altruistic, partly self-motivated, because or self-interested, if you like, because I've enjoyed doing the work immensely as well, and felt it was a privilege to do it, really.
Yeah, but if you enjoy your work, doesn't mean it's not altruistic as well, because it can be. And also, you've been involved in quite a few pioneering um, um, actions, really, by pulling people together and forming something that can move forward as a group. I mean, that is quite a skill in itself.
Yes, I think as I said, I love working with people, and I suppose I must have some people skills, but ultimately I think it's because I believe in artistic communities. And I think I do believe, and, and one of the formative influences on my own work as a writer was the Asian Women Writers Workshop, which Ravinder Randhawa had set up, and from which I learned hugely as an artist, because I learned this whole thing of the usefulness of cooperatives, if you like.
So, looking back, do you have any memories of anything that has particular significance for you in your own work or in your own journey that has really formed what you're doing?
You mean a personal life experience thing, or a personal?
More on the creative side, perhaps, yes.
Um, I think it's very difficult to single out any one thing, but I think something.
Well, we have singled out two for you, Kali and Salida.
But those are organizations, and they have had an impact in the sense that, I mean, once Kali was formed, I also had to keep writing work for the theatre, although I kept saying, oh no, I want to do fiction. In fact, I published my first novel in 1996, I think, or something like that, and kept hankering to do that. I kept getting radio jobs, which were adaptations or whatever, or original plays, and they made me money, and I needed to survive as well, just have something that gave me credibility as a writer, an income that gave me credibility as a writer. But I think the publication of Midnight's Children was had an impact. I think again Satanic Verses and the publication of that was quite an important moment, because again it was very divisive for communities. I think all kinds of communalism has always had an impact on me, because I hate it. I really do hate it. Communalism and parochialism are bigger sins than any kind of sin against God, against anyone's God, in my book. So I think they've had an impact as well. So I suppose looking back, theatre partnerships have been very important to me. The person who directed some of my Kali plays, Helena Bell, who now runs Pursued by a Bear, has been a very nurturing French friend as a theatre practitioner, and that friendship has been very sustaining. Vayu Naidu, with whom I worked on Mistaken, she produced my play about Annie Besant called Mistaken, which toured India. And that she is a writer of Indian origin, and that bond has been very valuable to me. And basically Chris Banfield directed that piece, and that was an important piece of writing for me. I think because it dealt with subject matter that was A, historical, B, anti-colonial, C, feminist, and all of those strands have been important in my work. It deals with Annie Besant, it deals with Annie Besant's relationship with India, with Gandhi, with the freedom movement, and it deals with tolerance as a subject. And tolerance and religion have been big themes for me. So I've written quite a lot about them.
So to round up, is there anything else you'd like to add to all that?
Well, I mean, I think I see my progress as a writer kind of only halfway done or 2/3 of the way done. I feel like I've still got work to do and work to finish. I'm working on a film script at the moment, which I don't know if it will ever be produced, but again, has been a very interesting journey. It has been a good professional change, gear change. I'm working on a novel that still needs polishing, which I hope will be published soon. If not here, then it will end up being published as a digital book or on Kindle or India or wherever, but I'm hoping to place it here. Certainly my agent will be sending it out even as we speak, but let's see where we get to. And it would be nice to do something in the theatre again as well, which I would love to do.
Best of luck for the future.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure talking to you.